Also as well, please remember we have our raffle going on. We'll be raffling off some of Kirsten's books today. Kirsten also has some books here for sale for $29.95, and you can come talk to her after the show about that. On the back table here, we have the raffle tickets. We also have the bio, and attached to that is the recipe. We also have a loose sheet of recipe for homemade English muffins. So make sure you get all those sheets. We also have upcoming. And so I will go ahead and let Kirsten and Mandy take it away.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. Thanks. I'm happy to be here. Mandy's happy to be here. There's a lot of you, and we have a little work surface area here. So I know if any of you can't see what we're doing, just sort of raise your hand and maybe I can lift something up or bring it out in front of you. I don't really like to be so far away from you, but we'll do the best we can. And then also perhaps at some point SBS will post the video of this, which will show close-ups, and you can watch the process a little bit closer as well. So I'm very honored to be here. I've been a participant in these events for many, many years and happy to be back. And I'm working today with my daughter, Mandy, who's my youngest daughter. She works for our company. She runs a little cafe on the homestead. So we know that we're coming right at the tail end of the holiday season, and for a lot of you, you've just sort of hit the wall in terms of entertaining. But this is really a celebratory dish. We're going to create crab cake benedicts. The recipe is coming from a new cookbook that Mandy and I are working on. We're half crazy right now because our deadline for our book is on Monday. So we're intensely working on getting all the final bits and pieces in place to send off to the publisher Monday afternoon. But the new cookbook is called the Tutka Bay Lodge Cookbook, and it will feature recipes and stories of our life at our lodge, Tutka Bay, which is across Kachemak Bay from Homer. We own another lodge called Winter Lake Lodge, which is on the Finger Lake checkpoint along the Iditarod Trail. And we're just getting ready. I have some crew out there, the kind of shady guys by the back door are with us, and they're just getting ready to fly out to Winter Lake Lodge today to open the lodge for our winter season. And Mandy and I will go back out there once they warm everything up and they get the water running and get it comfy for us. So, really in a lot of ways, we're just starting our winter season. And I mean, it's been winter for a little while, but we are just really beginning to get into the best part of what we call winter. And, often our winter merges into other people's springtime. But it's cold and dark here, and we really look to comfort food during this time of year here in Alaska. So I hope you can use the tools we give you today to make this a super easy, elegant, entertaining dish. Mandy went to school at the Cordon Bleu down in California, and then she later went to pastry school in California as well, in Napa Valley, and she worked there for quite some years in Napa Valley, and she's now returned and working with me full-time. She helps me develop all our recipes, and these recipes that you have today are the sort of the pre-published developing recipes that we will include in the Tutka Bay book. So they might have some changes by the time the book comes out in October, but the process that we've been undergoing really for over a year now is to really think and talk with each other and decide what collection of recipes we want to put into a book. And then we go into an intensive testing period in which we try different techniques and timings and ingredients and aromatics. And we do these recipes over and over again, and then we photograph them for the book. So we've just finished that process in terms of all that work that goes behind a cookbook. Now, homemade English muffins is one recipe we've given you. We don't have time today to actually go through and make the muffins from scratch because we have a couple other recipes we would prefer to show you. But this recipe is a super simple version of English muffins. Mandy makes this recipe nearly every day in her cafe. And so we offer that to you as kind of a little bonus recipe. Eggs Benedict are traditionally often in the U.S. served on an English muffin, but often in other places like England, they're not. And they're served on crouton or just on crusted bread that's often kind of cut round and toasted. And the reason for that is that some people feel that an English muffin might get too soggy, with all the ingredients on top of the English muffin. But we still prefer this, our homemade English muffins over any other. So the first thing that we're going to make is our version of our crab cake. And you should keep your eye on Mandy. She's doing all the work today. And we have I think, Dungeness crab today that we're using. It doesn't really matter what crab you use in your recipe, except it should be Alaskan. And there's a large variant of types of crab that you can buy. We actually purchased even an Alaskan crab yesterday, and we found it inferior. It was just too dry and too kind of shredded and too fishy for what we wanted to do. So, really in the best world, you're taking crab out of the shell, out of a Dungeness or crab carcass and using the meat that way. And, you have access to crab here all year long. You can get crab, whole leg crab at Costco and some of the Nusagaya and the many fish shops that are here in Anchorage. But that crab is really creates a better crab cake. So when you go back to the East Coast and you order crab cakes, often it's very fine, a fine texture with a lot of breadcrumbs an egg in the filler, and it's really something quite different. I mean, it's really a little breaded patty versus a crab cake. So we don't put any bread in our crab cakes whatsoever. We need to have something to bind the cakes together, right? Or they'd completely fall apart. Oh, my mother just came here. Hi, Mom. Oh, and my sister. Hi, Catherine. Catherine's a real estate agent if you need to buy or sell a house. I haven't seen them in a couple of years. So for a crab cake, you need something to bind it. So what are we going to use to bind our fish cakes or crab cakes, any kind of cakes that you're making? We use either scallops or we use shrimp, and we puree them. So we puree the scallops or the shrimp, and that there's so much collagen in those fish that they will bind the crab cake together. So Mandy unfortunately, we have some noise, and the setup's not ideal because she has her back to you, but she's just pureeing some scallops in a food processor. Probably everyone has a food processor in this day and age, but if you don't use a food processor, you could just certainly mince the scallops fine. And the other thing you can do is sort of mince half the scallops and puree half if you want a little bit of that scallop texture to show up in your crab cake. We often do that with our crab and shrimp combos. We like to do Asian style fish cakes that have a lot of cilantro and some spices in it. So we won't puree the shrimp 100% down. We'll leave a little bit of texture to it. Mandy's putting the scallop puree into a stainless steel bowl. We only use stainless steel bowls because stainless steel is very hard. The molecules of stainless steel are very hard, right? They're compressed together tightly. And if you scrape with your wooden spoon or your steel spoon, the molecules are less likely to tumble off into the dish that you're making. If you use an aluminum bowl, aluminum molecules are much looser bound looser together, and they'll sprinkle off into your food. And sometimes you can make something and whisk it in an aluminum bowl and it will turn gray, and you don't know why, and it's because little molecules of that material are coming out into your food. This, by the way, is a super informal session today, so if you have any questions, if you want to talk about anything food related, we've got a lot of time together and happy to, oh, okay, hi.
Can you buy shallot crab? I wanted some for, I can find it now.
Okay, yeah.
It works for steamed shallot, but,
So the question is, can you buy shelled crab already in a bag that's Alaskan and of high quality? And there's several fish markets in town. I know that Favco is one that sells bags of shelled crab. And I believe the other fish markets like 10th and M and Fish X downtown, there's several specific markets for fish, and I'm pretty sure that they'll either have it available for you, or you can ask and they'll create the product, or they'll shell it for you and sell it to you that way. Yeah. Any other questions? So what Mandy's doing then is she's crafting our crab cake, and you have the recipe for it. And the thing that you want, Alaska crab is so great, you don't want to overpower it with too many obscure flavors. And we really didn't want to put in any breadcrumb into our mixture. So it's just simply the scallops. And then with the crab meat, she drained the meat before we started this morning. So crab meat always exudes some moisture. You want to make sure that you put it into a strainer and kind of press to squeeze it dry, or put it into moistened cheesecloth and then lift the cheesecloth up and drain it to dry that way. You moisten the cheesecloth because all the outer layer of the crab would stick to the fabric of the cheesecloth if you don't moisten it first. But at any rate, however you do it, make sure your crab is nice and dry. And she always prefers to use shallot. She's going to mince a shallot into the, can you just hold the shallot up? That's a huge shallot. But we really love shallot. They're, an onion-like thing that tastes milder and more delicious than onions often. So we really love to use shallots in our delicate dishes. You can see Mandy's holding her hand above the shallot and then slicing almost through the shallot, not quite to the end, vertically, and then down horizontally, and then she'll dice it into small dice. Mandy's using probably about a 10-inch knife. We often use 10-inch knives in our kitchen for the right size for us, but using a knife, it's just a matter of finding the size of knife that fits right in your hand, an 8-inch or 10-inch knife. And also, to some degree, the volume of what you're cooking. If you're chopping up a lot of herbs, a larger knife does that a little bit better. You can see her fingers are kind of curved backwards so she doesn't cut them off. That would be embarrassing in the demo on camera. We've done it before. So now she's going to chop up some minced parsley. And so parsley, you can be parsley when it comes in the store often will have some sand in it. It's usually grown in sandy areas. And you have to always wash your parsley well, soak it in cold water for a little while, and you'll see the sand that come to the bottom of the bowl. And some people are very, particular about getting the stem completely off every leaf and then mincing the parsley. And other times you'll see the stems chopped right along in with the parsley as well. And that's certainly a personal choice of yours. So Mandy's just kind of rough chopping through the parsley. If any of you guys are interested in a particular knife skill after our demo, we can show you up here, kind of help you walk through a particular way of cutting up these little veggies. So our crab cakes have scallops, crab meat, shallot. We put just a touch of lemon juice in there, a little bit of garlic and parsley, and that's it. And that's typically often how we prepare our crab cakes always, unless it's a specialty like an Asian one that has some particular elements in it. You know, lemons are very precious in Alaska. They can cost up to, you know, $1 a lemon, but we still feel that they're kind of an important, vital element into our cuisine, and particularly our winter cuisine, to provide some acid. But if you really can't get to the, you know, counter paying $1 a lemon, and I understand that completely, you can use vinegar. A nice apple cider vinegar will work as well. You're just adding a splash of the acid flavor to sharpen the notes of the crab just slightly. Mandy's preheated the oven to 325 degrees, and she's just taking out one of our poached eggs that we're going to talk about in a moment. So we're going to show you how we poach our eggs to be perfectly round. So can you just kind of hold that bowl up a little bit, Mandy, and show everybody what the Why, did you just do that? Or no? Okay, so Mandy's got two crab cakes that she just pattied up at home to save us a little time. And she's going to actually saute them in just a little bit of butter. We always use unsalted butter, and we use unsalted butter predominantly because oftentimes we're reducing the butter. The more we reduce the butter, the saltier salted butter we'll get. But also unsalted butter is typically fresher. So in unsalted butter is considered a perishable product, and it has to go on to market within 3 months of production. Salted butter is considered a preserved product, and it can be stored and brought into market maybe up to a year later after production. So salted butter is always typically a little older when you purchase it. But that's the primary reason that we use unsalted butter in our mind, is just for a nice fresh flavor component. We think that it tastes better. But it will take on the flavors of your refrigerator, or it perishes quicker than salted butter. So you got to really watch it. It can get a little funky in the fridge if you leave it there for very long. Hi.
Can you freeze the unsalted butter and then just take it out when you want it?
Yeah, can you freeze butter? Sure. That's one thing that, freezes quite nicely. So you can freeze butter. Mandy's placing... Now, ideally, she doesn't have her really nice, she has a nice fish spatula that she typically uses, and she doesn't have that today. The fish spatula looks kind of like a hand with very tiny, thin tines that slope down to a sharp edge. And those are very handy for working with fish because you can scoop underneath delicate fish. So our crab cakes are sauteing. Mandy's going to put a little bit of tomato onto our Benedicts today. Obviously, you can dress these up and down. You can add in fresh spinach or sauteed spinach. I mean, you guys all probably know what components to an eggs Benedict that you particularly enjoy. She's smearing just a little bit of aioli that she made onto the English muffin. So we feel the English muffin needs something, some sort of sauce or a flavor note there on the bottom. I didn't give you a recipe for aioli, but aioli basically is a mayonnaise with garlic in it. Do you guys all know how to make homemade mayonnaise? Everybody know how to make homemade mayonnaise? So basically, you just put an egg into a food processor with a little bit of lemon juice, and in this case, maybe a clove or two of minced garlic and a little bit of salt, and whiz it up quite nicely, and then just drizzle in maybe a teaspoon of Dijon mustard, and then just drizzle in oil into the mayonnaise. Now, this is one case where we don't use extra virgin olive oil. It becomes too cloying and too heavy. So we like to use really clean, like canola oil, or maybe just a regular pure olive oil. If you want to use olive oil, a lighter olive oil is okay. But most often in our kitchen, we use grapeseed oil or canola oil for our mayonnaise. And you just blend it up, and you make a mayonnaise. So you add a lot of garlic into it. It makes an aioli. Okay, what's next, Mandy?
I'm just gonna put the crab cakes on the English muffins, and then we'll start making poaching our eggs.
Okay, so thank you. So we're gonna start poaching our eggs. Now, I really prefer to purchase organic eggs. This whole organic thing, you know, it's controversial, and some stuff that's labeled organic isn't necessarily good for you, and some things that are labeled organic are higher price than other things. But eggs are one of those areas. Either I like to have my own chicken eggs or purchase chicken eggs from someone that I know their food source, or I purchase organic eggs in the market. They're very easy to find these days. They're everywhere, and they're honestly not that much more expensive than regular eggs. Poaching eggs, you know, everybody, you probably all know how to poach eggs. You drop eggs into simmering water, and some people put a teaspoon of vinegar into the water to kind of coagulate the whites a little quicker so the whites don't spread out. Fresher eggs, by the way, make better poached eggs. But we're going to show you a method that's a little bit different. It's one that we like to use in our cafe, and it's kind of fun. Mandy has a little canning jar there, and she's lined it with plastic wrap, and she's oiled the plastic wrap with coated the plastic wrap with vegetable oil. And she's going to put her whole egg into that container. So basically, we're taking our egg, we're wrapping it up into plastic wrap and tying it off, and then we're dropping it into our poaching liquid. So the egg will be perfectly round in its little container. And this is a real fun, you know, very fun to do with children, or you know, fun at your special brunch where people are standing there watching you, talking to you. You can use a little piece of string to tie off the plastic wrap, or you can now get these little silicone ties there in all the kitchen shops that will tighten quite tightly, and these silicone ties are reusable, which are nice. So anyway, she's tied off the top of the. Can you hold that up? Yeah, and if you know, if you can get as much air out of the little container, the more contained the egg will be. The more air that's in the plastic wrap container, the little bit more spread out it'll be. So she's putting the egg into the simmering water. You don't want to have the water rapidly boiling. It'll break the egg up too much. And that'll take about 5 minutes to poach. Yeah. I think if you're worried about plastic wrapping in cooking, there are some alternative brands, you know, that have in the market that are BPH and free, that are labeled that way. That's one option. In this case, the technique won't be quite the same, but you can get one of those the silicone little cups that they sell, and put your egg into the little cup, and then kind of, you know, simmer it into the water that way. There's a couple other egg poaching apparatus out there that might be more usable for you. You know, we can all go crazy with trying, you know, understanding food and safety in our food, and safety in the products that we use, and you know, it's a very difficult path for all of us to understand our food choices in terms of safety and health, and you know, all of that. And you know, we all do the best we can with it, right? We all make choices somehow.
Just buying local is a good choice for food.
Yeah, the comment is buying local is a good choice, and absolutely, you know, the more local products that you can purvey, and that's getting easier now here in Anchorage with good farmers markets and a lot of really fantastic farmers. Mandy down in Homer has met many of the wonderful kind of Kenai Valley farmers that just come to her cafe in the morning time and offer her different organically grown food products. In general, it's very easy in Alaska to grow organically because we don't have a lot of pesticides and bugs that survive our winter. You know, we just survive, right? The bugs don't. But you know, it's a kind of a, you know, I know, it can drive us all crazy with trying to figure out what the right thing to do is. I love melamine plates, the little sort of hard plastic plates like, you know, Target has, and with the beautiful colors. And I've heard recently that melamine's, you know, out, so you know, we have to get rid of our plates and on and on.
So you're sautéing these cakes rather than in the oven, but you could
Yeah,
do it in the oven?
so we're sautéing. We only have a couple here, but you could slide them into the oven and cook them in the oven. You can you know, the way that we cook most things, fish, meat, chicken, everything, is typically we'll saute on the top of the stove just to sort of lightly brown it, and then we'll finish it in the oven.
Oh, okay.
And these cakes won't need that. But you know, you could certainly, if you had a lot of volume of the crab cakes, you could slide them right into the oven and skip the saute feature.
Just a little greased cookie sheet or something? if
Yeah,
you-
or a non-stick,
Or non-stick.
you know, like a parchment paper would work
Oh,
too.
okay.
Yeah. So while our egg is poaching, we're going to move into the third component of our demo, and that's hollandaise sauce. So a lot of people are kind of intimidated by making hollandaise sauce. It sounds kind of scary and a little heavy, and you know, basically a hollandaise sauce is quite similar to mayonnaise. So mayonnaise is made with oil and oil and eggs. Hollandaise sauce is made with butter and eggs. And hollandaise sauce can be made with 1 egg or 3 or 5 or 10. You know, the amount of egg that you use in your hollandaise sauce can really vary in terms of the product that you're making and the volume that you're making. Our recipe that we have has 3 eggs in it, but you could certainly do the same recipe with 2 eggs. So the first step in making hollandaise, Mandy has this pot here. See this, the high slopes of this pot right here? Can everybody see this pot? This is called a Windsor pot. And a Windsor pot is a really great pot for making sauces. And the reason why you'd want to bother purchasing a Windsor pot is that the sides slope up so your whisk can get into all the corners. If I was using a straight edge pot for sauce, all those corners wouldn't get into, and they'd start to burn and cause lumps. So these Windsor pots come in a couple different sizes, larger ones, smaller ones, and they're very handy to have in the kitchen. That's why you might see those sometimes in the kitchen store. Mandy, what she's doing is clarifying some butter in this pot. So that means she's just cooking the butter a little bit. She's making Indian ghee, or she's making beurre noisette in French terms. But she's cooking the butter down to remove the solids from the fat of the butter, and she's going to skim that off. So we do that also to remove some of the water that's in butter. So if we just use straight butter in our hollandaise sauce, our hollandaise would be runny. And that might be okay. Maybe that's what you want. So if you're doing, you know, at some point in some, you know, recipe, you want a very light, runny kind of sauce, don't clarify the butter. Just make the hollandaise, you know, straight. But the clarified butter is really handy to have in the kitchen. We pour off the clarified butter. We basically dump the solids, the whey and other parts that have come and, you know, landed in the bottom of the pot. But you can, you know, saute at high heat with clarified butter. It's just a very handy little thing to have in the kitchen. Mandy's gonna strain. She has a fine mesh strainer, and a fine mesh strainer. Hold the strainer up just for a second. Fine mesh strainer is really handy to have in the kitchen. It's thinner, and the holes are smaller than our normal strainers that you might find down at the store. Sometimes they can be a little hard to find, but when you get a good fine mesh strainer, it's handy for a lot of things. Just pouring sauces in that might have lumps, or, you know, whatever. My mother's gravy. No, just kidding. Just kidding. Yeah. So Mandy chose to pour this off into a mason jar. I have no reason, I don't know why, because I guess because we're here. She doesn't know why either at this point. But she might skim off a little bit of that white foam that's on the top of there, to remove that. Now she's gonna have a hard time doing that. She wanted you to see the clarity of the butter is what she wanted.
What are you skinning off?
Just on the white, there's like white foam that it's like kind of a salty foam on top of the butter. Skim that off when you're really clarifying it. It's what is it, Mandy? It's just little fat particles and salts and impurities of the butter. That's my go-to thing to do now whenever I don't actually know something. I just say, what is it, Mandy?
Can you save the clarified butter?
Absolutely, yeah. You can save clarified butter in your fridge or freezer area for a very long time, and it won't spoil as readily as regular butter because all the whey and all those other bits are out of the pure fat product.
So so there's really in the fat part, the flavor isn't in the fat part, it's in the this part itself.
Yeah, the flavor is really more concentrated. The water has evaporated off in the cooking, and the oil, basically think of it as a buttery oil that's left over, is quite flavorful. It's more flavorful. And I think they say technically it's like 5 times as more flavorful than just using regular butter. So when you spread a teaspoon of butter on a piece of bread, you're spreading on a lot of water, and you're spreading on the whey and other things and besides the fat.
So you would use this clarified butter to saute other things then, where you would ordinarily do regular butter.
Yeah, you can use the clarified butter as a saute oil, and it will have a high heat. We are true to certain cuisines when we're cooking, and if we're making a Hispanic dish, we might not use clarified butter. We might use olive oil, or so the oils that we use for sautéing. By the way, sauté is the same word as frying. So a saute pan is the same as a skillet. So if we're sautéing something in our kitchen, we use grapeseed oil, canola oil, or perhaps clarified butter in some cases. I would never cook those crab cakes in oil. They'd be way too, the mouthfeel wouldn't be very good with that.
I have more recently seen ghee actually sold in bricks in some of the natural food type of stores. Is that any good? Is it over processed, or is it?
So the comment is that she's seeing ghee sold in food stores and sometimes cans and etc. So should she buy it? Well, you can just clarify your own butter. You're just going to heat the butter over low heat until it melts. Cook it down a little bit and strain it, and then you'll have good butter. Now, I don't know, buying butter from India might be fantastic, or it might not. Who knows? You
I
don't
don't
know
whether it was made in India or whether it was made here. I don't look that close.
Yeah, right, yeah, very special pounds.
Yeah.
But if you know that you're buying fresh butter here, fresh organic unsalted butter here, then maybe go for that as an alternative, and it's probably going to be cheaper because of the handling and shipping and all that other stuff, right? But it's the same exact thing. That's all it is. Ghee. All that ghee is clarified butter.
And will the clarified butter solidify?
Yeah, it solidifies.
Oh.
Okay, so Mandy has taken our eggs and she's put them into our blender. And we like to use a little bit of hot sauce in our hollandaise sauce. And so the hot sauce that we use, the brand is called Peri Peri. It's a South African hot sauce, and I have a South African son-in-law. He brought it to me when I first met him, and I love it. So it could be Tabasco, or it could be any other hot sauce, but we always use this Peri Peri sauce. And Pardon me?
cayenne pepper.
You could use a little, half teaspoon or teaspoon cayenne pepper. Also, you don't have to. It doesn't have to be a liquid form. Now, a lot of people will. So these eggs are in the blender. Is that
just egg yolks or full eggs?
Are doubled. It's just the egg yolks.
Oh, it's just the yolks. Okay.
So she has some egg in the blender. Now, oftentimes when you read recipes, they'll say add 1 tablespoon of water per egg when you're making hollandaise sauce. We don't do that. That's to emulsify the egg. So you want to emulsify the egg. We put in lemon juice, and some purists say, don't put in lemon juice, don't put in too much lemon juice. People make hollandaise too lemony. But we like to have our hollandaise sauce have a nice sharp lemon note because it's going on to crab cake, which is very subtle. So we put in lemon into our hollandaise sauce. But the gist of it is basically, Mandy, why don't you go ahead? Mandy has the egg, the non-traditional, yeah. So Mandy has the eggs in the blender. She's adding in the lemon juice, and then she's going to add in our peri-peri or little hot sauce into the blender. Now, if we were old school, I would be using this this Windsor pan, and I would be whisking the eggs in here. And it doesn't take over low heat. It doesn't take very long, but you whisk the eggs to blend them really well. And then and you get them a little hot, and then you are going to pour in the butter. Mandy's doing this sort of a more modern way of using the blender and skipping this process altogether. If you don't have a blender at home, you can make this hollandaise sauce completely by using a pan and whisking.
Substitute lime for lemon.
You know, I've never done. Can you substitute lime for lemon? You could certainly do that. Certainly, if it's going on kind of like a Caribbean themed fish or. Yeah. And again, you know, if lemon's kind of out of the question, you could just go back to use a little bit of water in with the eggs. No acid at all. Or you could use just a splash of apple cider vinegar, you know, for that little apple note. You're not gonna, I think you're gonna prefer this version though with the lemon in it. So Mandy is now, can you just turn a little bit while you're doing that? Yes, no, she's no longer answering me. The eggs were emulsified, meaning the eggs were mixed up first, and then now the butter is going into the eggs. If you don't mix up the eggs first, the hollandaise will break. If the temperature is too hot of either the butter or the eggs, the hollandaise will break. If your hollandaise breaks, all you do is mix up another egg and then slowly add the broken sauce back into the whole egg, to the emulsified egg.
Is that warm butter you're putting in then?
It's pretty warm, yeah, because she had it on the stove. You know,
But it needs to be warm.
it needs to be warm, yeah.
And is the peri-peri sauce available locally?
I think it is. It's at Nusagaya.
Oh.
But here's the bottle.
How do they spell it?
NENDOS.
Yeah,
P-E-R-I-P-E.
And it has a very interesting history of Portuguese people coming to South Africa, and the Portuguese really bringing the sauce. But you can always call me, and I'll make my son-in-law bring some more over from South Africa for you. Okay, so now Mandy has made the hollandaise sauce, and we've been talking a lot, but honestly, everything that we've done can be done very fast. You know, you clarify your butter, you blend your eggs with some seasoning in it, you pour the butter in the eggs, and you have the hollandaise sauce. It's a very beautiful, rich color. Now, if you're concerned about calories or health, using eggs and butter, there's mock hollandaise sauce styles. We don't do that in our kitchen, but you can take a mayonnaise and add in lemon juice and hot sauce, and it will, you know, replicate something of a sauce. There is a site on the internet, I think it's Eating Well magazine, that has a hollandaise sauce that's really made from buttermilk and cornstarch. And it's only 17 calories, you know, for the sauce, but it just, you know, it's not something that we do in our kitchen at all. We just wondered if any of you are going to ask about the calories.
I've never eaten hollandaise sauce since that done.
So Mandy has made a presentation plate to show you. Did you see the egg coming out of the plastic wrap? Did everybody see the egg coming out of the plastic wrap? She has another one here. So after you poach this egg in the little plastic wrap, you just snip off the, you know, the tie on the top of it and open it up, and it will be a nicely rounded egg. A lot of fine dining chefs use this in the real fancy restaurants when they want just a perfectly round shaped egg on a particular dish. So it's quite a popular technique these days.
Is 5 minutes going to cook it so the yolk is still liquid?
Yeah, the yolk should still be liquid.
5 minutes.
Yeah. Now Mandy made samples for you, but she fried egg because she didn't think she could cut a poached egg into fourths. So on our sample today, then she has it in a little bit of variation, so we could actually pass it out to you. But that's our end product. So it's a very elegant, very Alaskan dish.
Are the English muffins toasted?
They're toasted.
They're toasted.
Yeah. And these English muffins are not homemade that we're using today, but we gave you the recipe for Mandy's English muffins to make your own English muffins. And remember, you could also choose to try the crouton method, which is to just have a piece of bread, cut it out into a round, and toast it or fry it on both sides so it's nice and crispy, and the crouton won't go soggy at all if you want sort of a crunchier element in the bottom of it.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to walk this around just a little bit, and then we'll get And now you know it can be so easy to make an Alaskan version of egg Benedict, and that hollandaise sauce isn't going to scare you. The question is what would we drink with this? And I recommend sparkling wine.
Personally, I don't get 3 yolks. I prefer but you could use 1 yolk with the same amount of butter, and it'll just be a lighter sauce. So you don't reduce anything.
You know, Mandy might be able to give you a little sample of the hollandaise.
Yeah, no, that's
If anybody has any allergies to crab, the samples have a little bit of the English muffin, the crab, some egg, and the hollandaise sauce on there just to help my eye. The heat of the butter and the heat of it's very easy to fix. I use
usually do an ice cube, and then the temperature is different based on multiply that together. But if you blend it too much, or the butter's too hot, those are factors that would make it.
Right.
And that's why everybody's so afraid of blending. So they do butter easily separate. But with the blender method, I've never had it separate. So it's really easy way to do it.
Freeze it.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I do. I have a thing of butter, unsalted and salted in there, and I have U or S on them in the freezer. Okay, any questions? Any cooking questions? Ask questions about any? The question was, is there any rule to when to use a blender versus cooking the eggs on the stove? Oh, a food processor is so wide, you're going to lose so much sauce. It's just harder and more unwieldy. So I recommend a blender. A food processor is not going to work as well. It's not going to emulsify everything as well. If you wanted to make hollandaise sauce for one person, you could use 1 egg, a little bit of the lemon, a little bit of clarified butter, a little bit of butter. You don't have to make a big batch, right? And you might be able to make a small processor. That might work. Sometimes those processors take hours out the, lead out the side. But you can give it a try. And you can always just, we didn't do it today because we thought we wouldn't have time. But you can always just use a whisk and whisk it in your pan, and it goes very fast. It's nearly as fast as the blender. But nowadays people prefer to do the blender method because, just because of time management. Maybe washing up the pot.
Nice presentation.
Any other questions? Any cooking questions about other things?
Well, this is about other things. Could you tell us a little about your cooking school?
Okay, I have a cooking school at Tutka Bay, which is across the bay from Homer, and we offer classes every day, May 1st to September 30th in the summertime. And you can go over, depart Homer at 10:30 a.m. and you return to Homer at 3 p.m. And there's information about that on our website at withinthewild.com. Each week we change our topics, and Mandy and I have done a lot of travel and culinary travel together, and we just created a collection of cuisines that we're very interested in. So one week we offer Japanese cuisine, another week it's Spanish cuisine, another week it's French cuisine, Indian cuisine. We always use Alaska products, though, Alaska fish, Alaska ingredients. So we're using diverse recipes from around the world and in context of where we are here in Alaska. I hope some of you may join us next summer.
So each day is the same class every day.
Or a different class every day.
Yeah, there's a calendar posted on our website, so sometimes they change it. Favorite go-to recipe for halibut? Really, we just will pan-sear halibut. So the thing that I can tell you about cooking halibut in a pan-sear way is to make sure the fish is completely dry. It has to be dried, or if it hits the hot pan, the liquid will come out of the pan, cool the pan down, and basically you'll start
poaching the fish and it'll be very dry. It'll extrude all of its liquid. So you want to take your piece of fish, pat it completely dry, salt and pepper it maybe, and then place it into a really nice high heat non-stick pan with maybe a little bit of oil in the pan. Sometimes we prepare halibut that's very thick, right? So we pan sear it on both sides, and then you can stick it into the finish it in the oven and just right till it's right at point, so that you're not burning the out. If you leave it on the top of the stove, you'll burn the outside of it, and the inside might still be too raw. And then beyond that, you know, halibut accepts so many wonderful flavors.
Would you sear it in the butter?
So someone just asked about, you know, you've seen sometimes where chefs will put poached eggs into cool water after they cook them. And that's only to hold the eggs. So you might take a little pan, like a little baking pan, and fill it with cool water and put the eggs in there. And then they'll stay until you're ready to get everything else done. And then just take a nice slotted spoon or a mesh strainer and drop your cooked egg back into warm or hot water before you serve it and to reheat it back up. If you put the eggs in the oven, they'd be way overcooked. So Mandy's getting some samples ready for you to pass out, and I think that we're going to have a little raffle for a couple of these books. This is the Winter Lake Lodge cookbook, by the way, which is the style and design of this book, the Tutka Bay Lodge book, will be quite similar, of course, with different recipes and different photos. But this book is for sale at Costco and at Sam's Club. I'm here in town. It's paperback edition, but it's a lot cheaper. And Mandy helped me with this book as well. Our son-in-law, Ty, the South African boy, did all the photos in this book, and Mandy did all the food styling and all the recipe testing. And the same thing happened for our new book. So I don't know.
We have one winner.
Oh, we have one winner already.
And the winner is Gail Boyer.
Gail, do you already have this book at home?
No, I don't know how to cook very well.
What's the name of the new cookbook?
It's the Tutka Bay Lodge cookbook. Okay, next winner. No more questions? No more culinary questions?
I was just gonna say, is that the recipe book that the macadamia nut crusted halibut comes from?
Actually, I don't make the macadamia nut crusted halibut. That's.
I thought it said it was from Tutka Bay Lodge.
That's well, the one that I know that's so famous is from the Marx Brothers Cafe.
Oh, that's not the one I have. It says it's from Tutka Bay Lodge or something. And it's my favorite way to make halibut. I thought it was your recipe.
There's a new one in Tutka Bay with the halibut cheeks.
Oh, no, this is
we did a hazelnut with halibut cheeks in the new one.
I think it's on the maybe it's a different one, but I love that recipe.
I don't think I stole the recipe and put it in here.
Does Tutka Bay have their own recipe book? Tutka Bay Lodge?
It's coming out in October.
Oh, but I've had this recipe for years, so I don't know where it came from.
I think it came from the Marx Brothers Cafe, but that's okay.
I'll attribute it to you because I
was there another question?
In this recipe, is it the little bay scallops?
Well, you know, the scallops doesn't matter. It's really the volume of the scallops, and sometimes, you know, sometimes in the market we get the little bay scallops, and other times there's the larger scallops, so that doesn't really matter.
And then this might be kind of embarrassing for me, but do you stay away from lemon concentrate?
You know, we live 200 miles from the store, and you know, if we don't have a lemon and there's lemon concentrate, I'll use it. You know, we all, even in Anchorage, we have to sometimes deal with the proclivities of what we have, you know, at hand. So lemon concentrate's okay. It's not something that I have to have in my pantry shelf. I would go to vinegar perhaps more, frequently than I would maybe lemon concentrate. But we do have some of our employees like to buy lemon concentrate because they drink it in hot water in the wintertime, and so we do have it in our kitchen. But, if my husband asks me what presents I want from town, I'll ask him for fresh herbs and lemons. And Mandy fried the egg on there, which is a little bit texturally different, but she just wanted you to have the egg, no. So many men.
Just say he never wins anything.
Okay, we have one more book. Dun, dun, dun. Ma'am, good to be here.
Barbara Williams?
Oh, sure. Oh, okay.
So Mandy, where is your restaurant in Palmer?
You can stay at
Do you know where you're at? Could you tell us where your restaurant is in Palmer?
It's a small cafe on the Spit. It's just maybe 2 places down from the Salty Dog on the same side of the Spit.
And what's the name of it?
La Baline, which means the whale in French.
We shall see you this spring.
I think so for maybe a grown man. Usually, like when you go to a breakfast place, you usually get 2. But with the crab cakes, it's a little larger.
Delicious.
So the question is about the pots and pans that we use, and specifically about this Windsor pan. This Windsor pan is a little heavier. It's a little heavier gauge with a heavier bottom than a lot of pans because it knows it's going to be making a lot of sauces. But all our pans are stainless steel on the inside because remember that stainless steel molecules are bound so tight. I know that they're not going to scrape into my food. Usually pots and pans have a core of aluminum or copper or something else because stainless steel doesn't conduct heat very well because it's so molecularly strong. We use a brand called All-Clad, and that's a plastic pan we use in our kitchen. They're American made. The question is, what's my attitude towards wooden spoons and as far as sanitation? So I'm old enough to have gone through, plastic cutting boards, wooden cutting boards, plastic cutting boards. The trend now is to go back to wooden because wood has an natural antibiotic component to it. And when wood is washed, it swells. The little breaks it may have had swell together shut. So wood is actually more sanitary than plastic that you might have little micro cuts on your cutting board. And I know you don't cut with a spoon, but I just go with that, philosophy that the wooden spoons, they're sanitized in the washing process. I like wooden spoons because they don't scrape the inside of my pots and damage the pots.
What about the silicone spatulas and spoons?
Yeah, so there's a lot of silicone stuff going on now, a lot of high heat turners and spoons and baking sheets and even baking pans and muffin tins, all types of silicone products. And we like them. We don't have a lot of them. We do use the silicone baking sheets often in our kitchen. Some of the silicone like muffin pans that go through hard, heavy use like we do, they begin to break down a little bit, and then we end up throwing them out. So they're kind of expensive for that. You know, we can buy a good muffin tin that will last a lifetime, you know, versus a silicone muffin tin that might make it through one season. So sometimes we don't, the expense of the item doesn't translate to heavy use. But we like them, they're easy to use in high school. Food, back food. Yeah, a lot of people are using coconut oil these days, and you know, it's just it has a high heat value and it has a healthy component. We haven't cooked too much with coconut oil or coconut, you know, solid fat. Too much. Have you done any recipes with coconut oil? No. Yeah, it's just something we haven't used very often. You know, I grew up feeling that coconut oil was unhealthy, you know, because of its, you know, it's not something, and you know, we don't use a microwave at all in our kitchen, so that's also another, you know, there's a lot of areas that we don't have expertise in.
So I about the website again.
Yeah, it's withinthewild.com. And we have a lot of recipes on that website, by the way. We have written articles for Alaska Dispatch for a long time, and we've posted all those recipes on that website. We used to own Riversong Lodge. Yes, that was our first lodge that we owned. We have a book. There's a book here. Someone brought an old Riversong Lodge book. So you might see these books, these old Riversong Lodge cookbooks at like Tidal Wave. They're out of print now, but they might be at Tidal Wave or something. They have some really, you know, that book has, books are like, you know, journals. So there's recipes in there that are, you know, sentimental to me from the 1980s. That book's floating around. It talks about Mandy as a little baby. Oh, where did I grow up, Mom? I grew up in predominantly California, and I came here in the 79, 80 as a nurse with the Public Health Service. I worked at the Alaska Native Medical Center when I first arrived here. And I met my husband and quit my job and we moved out to the Yentna River first. For salmon, I really, that description that I mentioned with halibut, you know, where you're just really filleting the salmon, taking off the skin, taking out the pin bones. Usually we trim the belly meat just slightly and use the belly meat for something else, but we want the fillet to have a, you know, basic kind of consistent size. Pat it dry very well. Pan sear it over high heat on the top of the stove. If it's a very thick fillet, then finishing it in the oven just right before.
Finishing in the oven, Margaret really does that. Is there some sort of rule? I don't know
if you can pan sear the fish on top of the stove so that it's not overdone, fantastic. I mean, you can do that, and particularly if you're buying, you know, smaller fillets, you know, that aren't so thick. The technical rule is that it's about 8 minutes per inch for a fish, a cookery. But you know, we can't keep a fish cooking at high heat for 8 minutes on top of the stove. If you pan sear the fish, it's going to have a nice crust on the outside, which we like, but then the middle's not going to be cooked quite enough. And if you wanted to get it just right at point, you need a little more control. So you're putting it in the oven where the heat's not so intense, but it's still moving forward. And you know, how many minutes is that really depends on the size of the fish. You can kind of get to a point, you know, like a finger point where you could kind of just touch the fish and it should just spring back, but not too much. You know, so just, you know, just the feel of the fish is a little spring to it. that it's done. 350 is fine. Yeah. But practice that a little bit and see, you might find that you prefer that, you know, then you're not. It also doesn't smell your kitchen up so much. You know, you're pan searing the fish and it goes in the oven, so it's not continuing to, you know, to smoke on top of the yeah, I don't know. I mean, you know, on top of the, you know, just a medium high flame is just good enough. I mean, I think that, you know, those non-stick pans are saying don't give us smoky hot, you know, which we don't do too much of that kind of cooking up here, you know, where you're real smoky food on top of it. Did somebody have a question back here? Are there any fishermen in here? How many pounds of crab in a Dungeness? Obviously size changes, but I think it's about 2 pounds. 2 pounds to 2.5 pounds for a Dungeness crab. Yeah. So, what do you, Mandy? That'd be too big. Yeah. So maybe that's the whole thing. So it's probably about half of its weight, right? Okay, so the question was how much meat do you get out of an average whole Dungeness crab? We're getting a residential expert here saying 1 cup, which is about 8 ounces of meat. But you know, you can always use those shells for stock, right? We make a really nice stock. We take crab shells and shrimp shells and mix them together, and then bake them in the oven for a while, and just a little while, and then begin to, you know, add in the water to make the stock. Our fish stock cooks quickly, about 20 minutes. I mean, one thing that's very hard to manage on the boat. You know, I think that, you know, they flash freeze the crab immediately on the boat. I mean, you king crab mostly. You can buy live Dungeness crab. So you're saying like why don't you buy raw crab? Yeah, I don't know the technical reasons about that, but I just think the meat deteriorates. Within the wild, www.withinthewild. Any other questions? Okay, tips on cooking moose meat. We're getting into, you know, lots of moose meat season now. So the big thing about moose meat is it's very lean and it doesn't have a lot of fat. And so that's just the thing that you need to know about it. You need to cook it like a super lean piece of meat. And you need to add some fat into it, or you need to cook it in a braised way or something that's going to add moisture into it so that the meat's not too dry. Somebody brought me some moose bacon recently. Wow. I think one of the
Indian Valley makes bear bacon.
Bear bacon. I'll have to try that. Yeah, moose bacon. Any other questions? Well, I love balsamic vinegar. It's gone out of fashion a little bit in modern cuisine. You don't see it as often as you did in the 70s or whatever. But I still really love to take crab. I love to take an avocado and take crab or crab salad and put it on top of the avocado and drizzle it with balsamic vinegar. That's just delicious.
Okay, Mandy. Why is balsamic vinegar called balsamic vinegar? Look on the iPad. Maybe the balsam wood of the, balsamic vinegar is really made interestingly. It goes into different casks of wood for months at a time, and the wood varies to add that mellow flavor to it. So it must be a derivative of the wood. Yeah.
I've seen a wine, rosin.
Yeah, and cheap you get what you pay for there. Cheap balsamic is, not as good as the expensive stuff. So I think that's our presentation for today, everyone.
Did everybody get a sample? Want to make sure we have a lot of folks here today. We didn't skip anyone.
I want to give you a little taste of
They have all these casks.
Thank you for Kirsten and Mandy for coming in. Our next Bon Appetit will be 2 weeks from now, and I believe we have Reuben Gerber from the Crow's Nest coming in.
Reuben's a fantastic chef.
Yeah, this was $4 a little while.
Is it? He's done I know. Yeah. Oh, you didn't know. I guess I missed
They use that. That's Spanish. Yeah. I wonder how heavy it is. Oh, you're down from Fairbanks? Oh. They don't have any cookies or things up in Fairbanks? Oh, do they? This is the first one I've ever been to Spenard.
One person does it.
Oh, but they have different people come in here then, I guess.
Very nice.
Yeah.
The restaurant.
Oh yeah, it's nice and heavy. And that's what she clarifies her butter in and makes her
So that's how it settles out in the bottom.
Yeah, that's the solid stuff. Stays in there. Oh, cool. Is this?